Like many others these days, during the confinement imposed by the coronavirus pandemic, I found myself watching a few extra movies on television. One was occasioned by a review I read. It was about a young woman who was a member of the Hasidic Jews living in New York, who found her religious observance to be very restricting and not life-giving. I subsequently came across several other movies about this very conservative religious group and watched them as well. In each, the theme was the same: a desire to seek a freedom or a way of life that was more life-giving. In fact, when asked by a rabbi why someone was willing to leave the group and pursue other avenues, they replied that upon leaving the group, they felt alive, or shall I say, they felt reborn. While there were many elements of their religious practices that were admirable, some were not, particularly the great length members went to discredit anyone who dared to leave the group. Those who chose to leave were harassed, systematically stalked, and were subject to disparaging and immoral accusations, resulting at times with being denied parenting privileges in favor of the parent who remained. Religious authorities were known to sanction these harmful actions and even suggested that there was foundation for them in the Talmud, their religious scriptures. The main characters in each of the movies that I saw wanted life. They wanted to become alive. And the religious practices that guided their daily life were not life-giving. And as I watched these movies, I came to see the discredited persons as all those people who are considered insignificant and discredited who live among us today. And their number is legion. It has taken this pandemic for many of us to realize how people thought to be insignificant to our very survival are very significant. We heard today how Stephen, filled with grace and power, was preaching a message that was life-giving. He was stirring up the people by his wisdom and the Spirit. His detractors instigated people to speak ill of him and to make false accusations about him and present false witnesses to discredit him. Is it a stretch to ask whether what happened to the main characters in the movies I mentioned and what we heard happen to Stephen is happening today? Regardless of what one responds, it remains that it's good for us to come together during this Mass and to reflect on the Scriptures and to remember the small and insignificant people of our world who continue to seek to be alive. It is what God has called each one of us to be able to achieve the fullest possible use of our gifts and talents that we have been entrusted with. In his exchange with his disciples in the Gospel today, Jesus questioned their motivation for following him. Was it pure, or was it motivated by something else? Their response seems to indicate that he was right to ask such a question, because there may have been some ambiguity in why they were following him. Instead, they asked Jesus what they could do to accomplish the works of God. Hopefully, there is one thing that we will never do, and that is act like the members of the Sanhedrin, who looked on the face of Stephen and commented how his face was angelic, all the while ignoring the faces of those lined with rejection and injustice. In our prayer today, alone or with our family, consider asking Jesus the question his disciples asked: what might we do to accomplish the works of God?